So a couple days ago, I did a video talking about some of the most overrated teams in college football. Some of you guys agreed and disagreed with the list, but there was one thing that was for certain. You guys wanted me to make a part 2, but instead talk about 10 of the most underrated teams in college football for 2025. That's exactly what I'm going to do today, as I have some of my own and some of your guys' suggestions, as we're going to talk about 10 teams that I think are underrated for this upcoming season, and talk about why, their schedule, and just my overall thoughts on them. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's go ahead and get started and talk about some of the most underrated teams in college football for 2025. So the first team I want to talk about is the Baylor Bears. I would say Baylor has been up and down the last decade or so, but really in the Dave Aranda era. It looked like there was a chance he could get fired, but last season he'd end up saving it. Baylor would start out 2-4, but then they would literally string off 6 straight victories to end the regular season against Texas Tech, Oklahoma State, TCU, West Virginia, Houston, and Kansas, and then they would lose their bowl game to LSU. Baylor went 8-5, and I think there's a good reason they should be hyped in 2025, and I thought they should have been ranked instead of Texas Tech. It all starts with their quarterback, Sawyer Robertson, who's one of the most underrated players in all of college football, in my opinion. Then you have guys like Keaton Thomas, who is an incredible linebacker. Bryson Washington became a star running back, and then receiver Josh Cameron is back. Overall, Dave Aranda always has a good defense, seems to have a good culture, is led by a good quarterback, have some momentum, and there's no reason why, in my opinion, they couldn't win the Big 12 this year. I don't know if they're going to be my pick to win it all, but I think Baylor is a really underrated team for this season. For our second underrated team that I also think should be ranked, we're going to talk about the Louisville Cardinals. Jeff Brom has done a tremendous job at Louisville since coming over by way of Purdue, and it seems that he really has a system going for him. He'll now, for his third straight season, have a 1-year rental at quarterback, this time being Miller Moss from USC. There's other reasons to have hype in Louisville though. They're led by their star running back Isaac Brown, who blew up as a freshman last year. Then you have guys like Antonio Watts, Wes Bailey, and Rodney Johnson, plus big-time tight end Jaleel Skinner. Wide receiver Chris Bell should also become one of the best weapons in the mainstream of college football, and their schedule has a couple of unique games, which sets them up for success. While they do have to play Miami, Clemson, and SMU, the schedule is not that terribly difficult, so Louisville I think could easily win 8 or 9 games this year. For our third team, we're also going to stay in the ACC and talk about Brent Key in the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. They've had one of the better rebuilds over the last couple of years, and Key has made them extremely tough, and it is hard to beat them. I mean, just ask Georgia last year when they were trying to get to the college football playoff. Georgia Tech returns one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Haynes King, and as a super senior, he is ready to lead the way. He also has plenty of other talented weapons around him, as receivers like Eric Rivers and Malik Rutherford should be a lot of fun. They have a really good running back in Jamal Haynes, and then guys like Kyle Efford, Matthew Alexander, and Amari Harvey are also really solid. Georgia Tech also has a schedule that's not horrible, as besides Clemson and Georgia, pretty much every other game on their schedule could on paper be winnable. Georgia Tech could have a really good season, and I think they are very underrated. Okay, so for our fourth school, we have a very interesting one in the Florida Atlantic Owl. You probably were not expecting to see them on the list, as I don't usually talk about a lot of group of 5 teams, let alone FAU, but I'm really excited for their young coach, Zach Kittley. I've been seeing and talking about him on the channel for quite some time now, as I watched him absolutely blow up at the FCS level, and then really do well at Western Kentucky. I think Zach Kittley is an offensive genius, and now as the head man at Florida Atlantic, and one of the youngest to ever do it, I think he's going to have a successful first season. He brings in his former quarterback from Western Kentucky in Caden Veltkamp, and they also have a really good receiver in Easton Messer. Running back Xavier Terrell should be pretty solid, tight end Khalil Brantley should be pretty solid, and then Jamari Sands is also fun. Florida Atlantic should have a very high-flying offense this year, and I think they could definitely catch some people by surprise. When you take a look at their schedule, they play against Maryland in Week 1, and I would not be completely shocked if they pulled off an upset there. Maybe it won't happen, but besides that, there are 3 other games on the schedule that should be circled, and that includes road games against Tulane in South Florida, then a home matchup against Memphis. I guarantee you FAU knocks one of them off, and they have a chance at winning 9 games in my opinion. And number 5, I have the Oklahoma Sooners. I've been high on them all offseason if you've been following the channel, but I really do think Oklahoma is really good this year. Brent Venables is hopefully finally going to figure things out, but after a little bit of a rocky start to last year in the SEC, I think the Sooners will be back and better than ever in 2025. Despite all that weird Venmo stuff, it looks like quarterback John Matier will be okay, as he was one of the top all-purpose yards players last year at Washington State, and arguably, in my opinion, the #1 quarterback in the portal. He'll now lead the way for them on offense, so they'll have better quarterback play than Jackson Arnold and Michael Hawkins Jr., and then they grabbed a really good running back in Jaden Ott, who is super productive and underutilized at Cal. That is one of the best 1-2 punches in the SEC. And then they returned some receivers from last year with guys like Deion Burks, who will finally be healthy. And they also have depth. Javante Barnes and Xavier Robinson should both be really fun at the running back spot. And on defense, you'll have R. Mason Thomas, Robert Spears Jennings, and then a guy like Eli Bowen. When you take a look at their schedule, it could be a lot worse, as they get Michigan, Ole Miss, Mizzou, and LSU at home, and then road trips against South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, and then technically Texas. I predicted Oklahoma will win 9 games this year, but I still think they are going under the radar in my opinion, despite also being ranked at number 18 in the nation. I will admit, I've been a critic of Deion Sanders and Colorado football in the past, but this year, I actually think the Buffaloes are kind of going under the radar. Instead of getting too much hype that they got the last 2 seasons, Colorado's not even really being talked about as a threat in the Big 12, and they're not ranked. They obviously lost some big-time players, including both of his sons, a pair of wide receivers, and some other dudes who just graduated, but Colorado is trying to reload for next season. They returned 2 top offensive linemen in Jordan Seaton and Xavier Hill. They got an experienced transfer at quarterback who I think is a lot of fun in Caden Salter, a good halfback in Micah Welch, but obviously there's going to need to be some help at the receiver spot. Omarion and Draylon Miller do return, they got Joseph Williams, and they have former 5-star Hakeem Williams from Florida State, but someone's going to have to show up. You're also going to have to bank on Caden Salter being good and the defense getting better, but luckily their schedule isn't too brutal. If they can just find a way to take care of Georgia Tech in week 1, that gives them a lot of momentum, but it's nearly impossible to predict who's the best in the Big 12 right now because it all feels the same. But either way, nobody's really talking about Colorado right now, and I think they do deserve more credit and more attention. Up next, we have a team and a coach that's always very consistent, but doesn't necessarily get the respect or the hype he deserves. That is PJ Fleck and the Minnesota Golden Gophers. It seems like every year Minnesota finds a way to pull a rabbit out of the hat and get good even though they really aren't that good. Last year, Minnesota saved their season after a rough start, but going into 2025, I still think they are underrated. It's guaranteed the team will be tough, the defense will be good, and they'll work for every yard, but they do have some help. Darius Taylor is one of the better returning running backs in the Big Ten. Coy Parrish could be the best player Minnesota has seen in a decade on defense. And then behind them, you still have AJ Turner, who's a really solid backup, Anthony Smith, who's a really good defensive lineman, and then 2 transfer receivers in Javon Tracy from Miami of Ohio and former guy Logan Loya. So the offense should be alright. Honestly, the biggest question mark about Minnesota is without a doubt going to be the quarterback position, as Drake Lindsey is a redshirt freshman who takes over, but he put up huge numbers when he was in high school, and the staff has a lot of faith in him, so while he probably is the least known quarterback in the Big Ten right now, I think Minnesota will be alright. I mean, Max Brosmer got much better by the end of last season, and Minnesota's schedule always starts out like trash. In their first 4 games, they play Cal, Rutgers, Northwestern State, and Buffalo, and they should be 4-0 going into that matchup with Ohio State. Besides Ohio State and Oregon, every game on that schedule is somewhat winnable, so I think there is a chance Minnesota has a breakout season. For our 8th school, we're going to take a look at the Washington Huskies and stay inside of the Big Ten Conference. Washington was really good a couple of years ago with Michael Penix and Kalen DeBoer, but now as they move into the Jed Fish era, there was a little bit of a roadblock in year 1, but it looks like in 2025, they are going to be back and potentially better than ever. Okay, they probably won't be better than those 2022 and 2023 teams, but Washington has a lot of fun players. Jonah Coleman returns as one of the best running backs in the nation. Then at receiver, you have potential first-round pick in Denzel Boston. The guy throwing them the ball will be DeMond Williams Jr., who I think PFF said was the best freshman quarterback in the country last year. I don't know if I'd go that far, but the defense is also loaded with a great pair of corners in Takario Davis and Ephesians Prysock. And then in terms of their schedule, they play Colorado State, UC Davis, and Washington State in their first 3 games before having to travel on the road to Ohio State. That could be a really interesting matchup to watch. And then they also get Michigan, Illinois, and Oregon, who are ranked inside the top 15, but I would expect one of those 3 schools to eventually flame out. 8 or 9 wins is possible for Washington, and I think they're underrated. One of the most fascinating teams on this list, in my opinion, is the Pittsburgh Panthers. I believe they are underrated for 2025, and part of the reason no one's talking about them is because of how they ended last season. Despite starting out 7-0 for the first time in forever, Pitt lost their last 6 games, and that's why everybody gave up on them. They still returned the core from last year's team though, as Desmond Reed's one of the most elusive and best running backs in the ACC, Eli Holstein once again returns at the quarterback spot, and then they have some defensive beasts like Kyle Lewis, Raheem Biles, and Javon McIntyre. The receiver spot, they do lose Kanata Mumpfield, but everyone's hyping up Raphael Williams Jr., and Kenny Johnson should also be really solid as well. Pitt has a schedule that's not too terrible, as their first month include West Virginia, Central Michigan, Duquesne, and Louisville, and I think there's a good chance they go 3-1 in that stretch. They avoided Clemson, but still have to play Notre Dame, Miami, and Georgia Tech, so while getting to 10 wins might be difficult, I at least think they can improve upon last year and have the potential to be even better. And finally, for our last team in today's video at number 10, we're going to have the Ohio Bobcats. I want to cover one more group of 5 school because they don't typically get a lot of love, but I think Ohio has a chance at a dark horse run to the college football playoff. I know you might think I'm crazy for saying that, but the Bobcats are led by one of the best quarterbacks in the country in Parker Navarro, who you probably don't even know exists. This guy was running around like crazy last year and only got better as the season went on. Besides Navarro, they have a really good safety in DJ Walker, and just overall, I think they're a good team. The first month is absolutely ridiculous for Ohio though. They play on the road against Rutgers, then against West Virginia, and then at Ohio State. If they can somehow come out of that stretch 2-1, then I think there's a good chance that they literally go 11-1, win the MAC, and go to the college football playoff. I mean, if they were to pull off 2 upsets against 2 Power 4 teams, that would be crazy, but in all likelihood, I think they only win one of those first 3, meaning they could max out at 10-2. Who knows, maybe Ohio will be absolutely terrible and I'm dead wrong, but I have some faith in the Bobcats and I really like their quarterback, so we'll have to wait and see. But what do you guys think? If there's an underrated team that you think I missed on the list, let me know down below and I can make a part 2. Let me know which topic I should cover before the season starts, and also don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and check out some of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.